You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have what might be my most important video when it comes to Flight and Star Citizen. Very passionate about this, and I don't think this is yet to be covered in anyone else's video. Spoke about this on stream one day last week, and I've kept thinking to myself it would make such a strong video and give people real insight they've not even seen before. In the video, I'm going to break all of this down to the atoms and even give you guys a look behind the scenes of some of the best pilots in the game training with each other, including the guys in Shadow Moses. There's so much agenda pushing with people wanting to push the game closer to being able to 1v10, higher speeds so that they have less risk in PvP, etc. And I really mean this. There is a ton of misinformation with MasterModes out there coming from the top. The plan for this video is to show you guys the insane, exciting potential of low top speed fights, especially in the face-to-face format, or in other words, 1 vs 1. Now, for full transparency here, I need to explain to you guys how this works. There's two forms or ways to look at PvP or dogfighting in Star Citizen. You're either talking about things through a 1v1 lens, meaning face-to-face combat with your target, or you're referring to a larger fight with multiple targets, meaning you're referring to, for example, coming up behind your opponents and third-partying them, escaping multiple enemies chasing you, coordinating with friends. Let me be completely clear on this. This is not a video for that, but expect one in the future that better covers squads and that type of positioning. This video only covers face-to-face combat or 1v1 situations. Note that this can happen in a team fight regardless if there's separation, and this is definitely more prevalent in the lower numbers fights. Example, you add a couple more pilots to the mix and combat would more look like this. You instead add another 6 players to this fight, and the combat drastically changes with less face-to-face combat. The goal here is to highlight and demonstrate to you guys what good geometry and positional combat looks like in a face-to-face sense, or again, 1 vs 1. That is the purpose of the video. It is to serve no other purpose. So when I read in the comments section your arguments or debates, make sure you are referring to this. We are talking about face-to-face combat today. We will talk about the larger picture in another video. But before we get started, I need to show you what bad geometry or bad face-to-face combat looks like. This tends to be amateur fighting, low skill gameplay, or gimmicky, cheesy, you name it. It also comes with a problem set. When face-to-face combat is encouraged or pushed towards benefiting ranged fighting like this, wiggling becomes more prevalent, and also the only method of evasion becomes about just trying to run away from the hose of fire coming in your direction. This is happening because of higher weapon ranges, most importantly, with no damage fall off, which is prevalent in MasterModes. It's also a cost to limited resources for pushing offensively. Why push forward and use your boost offensively for little reward when you can have higher evasion or just play a neutral style from distance? Why risk pushing forward and bleeding those resources? Let me be painfully clear here so everyone understands. This was the only face-to-face fighting that existed competitively, keyword competitively, in the last flight model. Conserve your boost, win the aim trade evade when possible using your lateral strafes. Just avoid the hose. I don't want to cover too much of this because we ultimately want less of this for a multitude of reasons. Now let's move into the next part of the video. I'm going to show you guys first off a video here, which is me breaking down a perspective from a pilot named Gaddz from the organization Liberty Reapers. The link to his video will be in the description. This video is pre-MasterModes, but highlights some of the things to help you guys better understand what I'm talking about. Hey guys, just quickly before we get started, I orientated my microphone pretty poorly, so there's a couple moments throughout the video where the microphone gets a bit fishbowly, and I apologize in advance. Second, the fights towards the end and the second half of the video show some pretty incredible positional combat in the current flight model. So just keep that in mind, yeah? I break down the old flight model in the beginning, and the second half of the video is to be more appealing.
The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it.
Alright, so first video that we are going to break down to the atoms, guys, is a video from a pilot named Gaddz, which is a part of Liberty Reapers, which is a prevalent PvP organization. You can find this video in the description, yeah? So, important to understand too, I must preface this with this. This is pre-MasterModes. This is the old flight model, okay? This is not MasterModes, all right? So, why am I including this video? Because it shows examples of good positional combat, but it's happening unorganically. Why is it happening unorganically, you say? For example, right now, the first pilot of the video is his own org mate. So, in other words, this is scripted to a degree. Not to discredit anything, but this is pilots who have agreed to fly a certain way, which does not happen in reality back then in that flight model. When you aren't agreeing to fly a certain way, or the fight isn't scripted, so to speak, the meta falls apart, positional combat falls apart. I'm going to explain how that happens in this video, all right? Now, to do that, I need to explain to you guys what good combat positioning or flight positioning is inside of face-to-face combat for 1v1s, not the other way around, okay? So again, here comes the target, right? The drift is going to the right of the screen, down straight from Fuzz. Gaddz is going to plan her to do a pre-turn. I'm sure you've heard of this terminology before. Pre-turn is when you know the direction your target is drifting towards or flying towards. So you plan ahead of the turn to get ahead of the turn rate and start to get onto your target once you have a position. So it's like you know where they're heading in the next 2 seconds in advance. So you start the turn early to get a position that is favorable for you. Gaddz is about to do that here. Also, it's highly skillful that he's doing so with an empty capacitor. You look at the guns up there, they're all empty. Great chance or great time to do the maneuver. So here it comes. He's using head tracking to plan it. He's cut behind Fuzz Courage, the pilot here, and has gotten a position. I just need to explain this too. This is happening because this fight is scripted. These guys are playing non-meta ways to have a lot of fun, and it looks awesome. Recreating this competitively, impossible, yeah? This does not happen in the top fights back then in the last flight model. So, like, awesome pancake. Consequence, though, it's hard to stay on the horse, especially with this last flight model. You get that position, they will buck, they will roll, they have the turn rate to get out of it, but still awesome, right? This is awesome combat. We love to see it. I'm a big fan of the video for these reasons. But watch how Gaddz gets the pancake, which means a top view of the ship, right? He's got him where he wants him, but he can't maintain it. Fuzz, because of the flaws of the last flight model, can defend his position extremely easy without little resources, Gaddz will have an extreme hard time keeping that position. Fuzz, again, defends himself pretty easily. He's not vulnerable for long. Manages to turn it back into a face-to-face trade, even though he had fallen so far behind in the positional. Gaddz, being already far ahead, has won the duel. Now, I want to be clear here too. Despite the fact that he gets this advantage, right? I'm just going to double check here. Not one shot was fired. So despite him having that turn rate advantage and having that pancake, he couldn't close the deal. Yeah, which is a shortcoming of the flight model and not the player. Gaddz, again, incredible pilot. But by the time he gets the damage off, they're face-to-face already again. Okay? Another one, Death Dealer God. I don't know if this is scripted. Usually when you get a fight that's heavily positional like this, especially in the last flight model, it's because of one of two things. One, the player you are fighting against is playing in very good faith, non-meta, and has agreed to you prior to fight a certain way, right? Two, they just aren't experienced. I don't know which of the two this is, but here we go. Okay, so look, right there. Gaddz flying close to his target. He can see the momentum, the direction he's going. He's empty capacitor, which is really credible to him. He starts the pre-turn here when his resources are low. Why bother to charge up your resources when you are out of capacitor? Why bother charging it face-to-face? Yeah? Why not instead try to take advantage of this time that you're going to need to recharge your weapons and get a position? So that's what he does. He starts the turn. Now, if you look, he's directly on the pip right now. His crosshair right now is aligned perfectly on the pip. What pre-turning means is sacrificing that to start the turn early and get a position. Here it comes. He flies off the pip, gets an insane pancake for the belly of Death Dealer God here, wants to turn his ship onto it, gets a little bit of advantage. Here we're looking at what? Maybe 70 degrees. In less than a second, that 70 degrees is defended by Death Dealer God. Example, a shortcoming of the flight model here. Gaddz is having a harder time to take advantage of this turn rate. That's okay. We don't want him to be able to sit there on the pancake. Someone needs to be able to defend themselves. The time frame and the resources it costs to get here is also important. Also, the problem is Gaddz is at the mercy of the drift that the flight model had. Because the speeds are so high, Gaddz has the ability and control when it comes to turning, pitching, and yawing, but he doesn't have much control in the direction that this fight's going. This is a major shortcoming of the last flight model. Players, because the speeds were so high, were almost going down the river. They didn't have much control over the fight. They were just trying to keep guns on each other while inside of the drift. We call this in Shadow Moses going down the river. Yeah, the meme being the River of Dreams. We will continue watching the fight. Gaddz can't stay above him, but he's going to keep trying to turn to get that pancake. Goes for it. All right, we're on to another clip here. Again, pre-nose, there's the pancake. He desperately wants to get back onto it. He gets back on. Again, maybe a 1 second advantage to this turn because this player that he's going up against manages to defend quickly. They can quickly get back to each other's nose. The problem is because the drift is high, the speed right now is 400 meters, which is closer to the ceiling of MasterModes, right? Because of this, they don't have as much control in regards to their actual position. They have control of their turn rates and where they are looking, but they don't have control in where they are placed in relation to each other's ships. They are at the mercy of the drift, at the mercy of the river they're going down. Okay, again, huge pre-turn here. Gets a little bit of offset, but you see Asabi is a bit more experienced. He defends himself well. He's not going to let Gaddz slip off his screen. Another pilot. Again, these are all org members. Gaddz pre-noses the heck out of this, but the consequence isn't severe, right? So you make these great maneuvers, but because the turn rate's almost so high, there's little control in the drift, and because you're stuck going down the river, which is high top speed combat, hard to control the position, right? You can control the turn rate, you can control what you're looking at. It is difficult to control your position. This is where MasterModes benefits positional combat. Because you have lower top speeds, the speed is more grounded, you are not going as deep down or as fast paced down the river or the stream of the river. You have a little bit more control thanks to more confined spaces and more confined speeds. Again, another one gets the pre-turn. This is a nice one. But look, Lucia defends himself pretty quickly. Gaddz doesn't get a huge damage output thanks to the outplay. Yeah. So this is the problem. We need a flight model where getting a position rewards you, because to get this position, if you look to the left on the boost pool, Gaddz is bleeding a lot of resources for this. You spend a lot of, and this is a problem inherent to all the flight models so far. You need to use all of your boost to outplay an opponent. All of that boost is going to cost you the fight anyway. So why bother trying to use all of your resources to get the position if by the time the player defends himself 1 or 2 seconds later, this player is empty on resources? Yeah. Finally, the hand cam comes in useful. A+, awesome pilot. Same with Gaddz. Gets a nice little pre-turn. A+ defends it. Okay, same with Claw. Defends it well. Not as well as Gaddz, but manages to get back on side. He is getting advantage from doing this, but it's not significant enough, and he's using a lot of resources to do so. This one's awesome. Look at this. Gets damage on as well. This is good combat. But the problem is guys, this isn't the meta, right? Like, you're not going to be able to force this. This isn't what the ceiling of combat looked like in the last flight model. When two players are of equal skill at the top and know what way to play, no matter the positional combat, it always stays face to face and not as exciting because both players have to defend. Now, how do we get to good positional combat? It needs to take into account very good boost balancing to reward pushing, for example. A good example of this could be, reducing the cost of boost to press forward, all right? And maybe making mechanics that punish playing neutral and just defending, so that the player that is constantly trying to play offensively isn't using all of his resources and then becoming a sitting duck, whether this player just has to defend himself for a little amount of time and then win. Because that's where we're at. Playing just subtle, defensive, neutral play style, conserving your boost, is always going to win over spending a lot of resources trying to get the position, yeah? I know it's dorky with my hands, but it's a good way to explain it. So he gets a massive pre-turn here. This is a big outplay. And there you go. But look, Gaddz is out of resources. Towards the end of the duel, once the position's been gained, it's returned to face-to-face combat, and they're just shooting at each other. This is a huge downfall to the last flight model. Okay, so we can speed this up again. Huge pre-turn. Gets a really nice position. There's a skill difference here significantly, and we're seeing it on display. Gaddz is almost out of resources completely, so the fight has devolved into majority face-to-face. Yeah, it's a little bit of out-turning and stuff here, but again, not as much as we would like. This is as good as combat face-to-face can look in the last flight model. You are seeing the most appealing and attractive combat that you can in the last flight model, because almost no positional combat was possible. So this isn't actually a compliment. Now, something I need to include here is Lindell's here is not playing, as far as I know, to the script of Gaddz, meaning these guys, I would assume, are not in Discord together. Actually, they're in a battle royale, so we can almost assume that's the case. And this is what a competitive fight would have looked like last flight model. So Lindell's, we're expecting to defend his position really well and not get outturned. Look at how quick Lindell's, being a good player, manages to constantly bring his nose back to Gaddz, despite Gaddz wanting to pre-nose and get a position. Gaddz wants the pancake, a top view of his ship, all right? Linds is not going to give him that. This is a shortcoming of the flight model. Look, he wants it here. Lindell's isn't going to give it. Here we go. Here's the pre-nose. Wants to get the pancake. Lindell's defends it. It's a barely 1 second advantage. We're talking about 3 shots at the cost of a lot of boost. Lindell's here looks like he's breaking off. He's not even trying to fight at this point, so I don't know what's going on. I think there's maybe a reset going on or something. Either way, they decide to reset. Here we are. Face-to-face trading. We have to speed the footage up to make it look appealing. This is just a face-to-face aim trade. Again, a consequence of the last flight model. These speeds are at about 400 to 500, by the way. So again, the higher the speeds, the more the combat falls apart. Now, this is an interesting one. We've got AvengerOne here. There's certainly some bad blood, so we expect this fight to look as unappealing as possible because these guys have no prior agreement. We're expecting a lot of face-to-face combat and next to no geometry out of this. Because, again, this is not scripted. It's an aim trade. We're watching Osu, so to speak. It's just there's no out-turning. We're getting very little, next to no positional combat. This is 2 people just aiming at each other's pips. Whoever's most accurate wins. Despite trying to create positional combat, it's not possible, right? Because the flight model is not rewarding aggression and it's not pushing this fight closer to each other. If anything, because of the resource limitations and because of the lack of the ability to turn, a lack of ability to be able to create position in this flight model, it's just face-to-face trading. These guys are not going to stop looking at each other. He's turning on a 45-degree angle and using head tracking. He wants to turn this ship quicker than it already is. He turns it. He turns it. Avenger's defending himself. He gets about 10 to 15, 20% offset, meaning he's just this much above the nose, but he can only manage it for a very little time frame. Not enough to create a lead. He tries it again. The fight's returned face to face. Again, poor positional combat 1v1 is face-to-face combat like this. This is not what we want out of MasterModes. We want something interesting, something aesthetic, something that looks like a lot of fun to play and isn't just an aim trade. Reiterating that this is the previous flight model. This is not MasterModes. Again, we're seeing this use of head tracking, but can't take advantage of it. Again, mostly 2 opponents looking directly at each other. Both are deep red. That's it. So that's the end of the first video. The point I wanted to make here, guys, was when you would script in the last flight model or fly a different way than normal, you could have cool positional combat. But without trying to be disrespectful, which I am not trying to be, it's roleplay. You're scripting, you're agreeing to fly a certain way when you play against each other. You cannot recreate this against players that are going to break that position, create distance, and play defensive, passive styles. The trick to making MasterModes truly great when it comes to face-to-face combat is to buff and reward players for playing offensively and aggressively and going for position. Issue is that is tied to resources, which is being spent far too much on the offensive and aggressive side of things in comparison to the defensive and neutral side. So, for example, if 2 players were to fly in the last flight model and one player was to go heavily for position, the other player would play defensively for the first 10 seconds. The other player would run out of steam. Then you kill them nice and easily. We need to reward the player for playing offensively and aggressively and going for a position by giving them the resources or the tools to do so, and then giving them the advantage from doing that. A good example being, if you're doing damage to the hull of a ship as opposed to the front face of a ship, maybe increasing the damage, something like that. Either way, multiple ways to do this. You could look at creating consequences for a neutral, flat playstyle where you're playing defensive. You could make consequences to backstrafe, consequences to wiggling. You could make consequences to distance, or you can create benefits for playing aggressively. For example, forward boost, not costing nearly as much of your resources. Getting angles on ships, doing more damage. For example, sides of the ships are more fragile, and so on. But then you have to look at the bigger picture, like squads and stuff like this. The trick is the flight characteristics of the ships, I believe, need to be asymmetrical to reward pushing, to reward aggression. The player that converges the fight is rewarded. 2, resources need to not be as costly for promoting good positional combat. Yeah. The way to do this, many different ways. Okay, I do not care which one. I care about the destination that we arrive at, hopefully. Anyway, so that is the Liberty Reaper video. Again, check in the description. Really awesome. Let's move on to the next video, which will be MasterModes.
How was he? 10 hours straight. He's a machine. I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
Okay, guys. Next video here we have is Tatsumo's POV. He's our pilot of the group 2 Linear, which is a French PvP organization. The channel and video will be in the description. He definitely has a series on this, so worth watching, worth having a look at. Now, very important I preface this video and make this completely transparent. This is not an indication of where things are, but it is an indication of where things are closer to. This is the early days of MasterModes. It's in the PTU build and it's an experimental, meaning this does not have the exact iteration as what we are flying with the MasterModes now. And these players are getting their feet wet, learning how to play. The play style, which is the cheesy mid to long range wiggling or just trying to out aim your opponent at distance, the Hornet meta of flying up against the speed wall and then just using the drift to kill any positional combat and just turn it into a face-to-face trade. Those poor gameplay strategies hadn't propagated yet. Yeah, this is players fighting in good faith. They are dueling in free fly. They are org mates who are agreeing, sometimes org mates, where they are agreeing to fly a certain way. This is not indicative of where it's at now, but it's a lot closer to this than the last flight model. I'm going to point out where the flight tunings and characteristics help aid positional combat in comparison to the last flight model. Here we go. So again, the hallmarks of a good positional fight in a face-to-face 1v1 aspect is a lot of use of head tracking. The nose is not just being pointed at each other. Close range combat. Yeah, I'm going to show you guys how we get there. Again, heavy use of head tracking. What he does here, I'm just going to reverse it back a couple of seconds here. He's using his head tracking to plot his course here. He needs to use pitch up because we are in a pitch meta in MasterModes. The fastest way to get to a target is to pull your nose up or pull your nose down onto the target. So to do that, you need to roll to compensate and then pull it up in this case, yeah? So he's rolling, using the head tracking to find out how far he has to roll, and then pulling the nose up onto the target. The goal being, get the pancake. Get that view that you're looking at of his ship, but have your crosshair aiming at it. That's the goal. Yeah, that's what a awesome outplay looks like in MasterModes. Here we go. He's boosting. A huge benefit to MasterModes is the fact that turn rate is tied to boost as well. So if you use boost, and I wish for the record they would further lean into this. I'll explain why real quickly. When ships are in the same archetype, they have very similar flight characteristics. When you're in a mirror matchup, it's hard to create flight characteristics or outposition players when they have the same tools at their disposal, which you can use offensively, you can use defensively. So the problem is that when two ships have the same flight characteristics, they cancel each other out. How do you fix that? You create variation in how you can fly the ship. Limitations you can push to it tied to resources. Meaning, a player that uses boost on turn rate is a conscious decision. It's a gamble. The other player might not use that boost. You've created variations in a mirror matchup. One player is turning faster than the other player despite them being in the same ship because you decided to gamble and use the resource. The more variation, the more layers, the depth you add to ships, and the more multiple ways to fly it, the more opportunities you create for outplay and then good geometry in combat. So tying boost to turn rate is something I have grown to love, and I think it's really nice. Yeah. It also does come down to the turn rate speed. You don't want it to be instant, but you do want to create an advantage for using your resources. The ultimate goal here, guys, is to make asymmetrical flight in the sense that even though they're in a mirror matchup, they can fly very differently. Yeah. Tying boost to turn rate is one of them. I'm a major fan of this. Initially, I hated it, but it's created different flight personalities between the same archetypes, different play styles for players to use. Chef's kiss. We like this. Hope that they would lean further into it. So again, using his turn rate and he's using boost, you can see he's boosting to get this fast turnaround. And because he used boost, which was more prevalent in the earlier iterations, they've since nerfed a lot of the turn rate tied to boost. But because he used it, he's created 30 to 40 degrees of offset. He is at an angle almost 45 degrees off his nose. This is an advantage. He's creating a snowball here, but it cost him resources. He's at 37. Now, Watermelon, being smart, sees that he has the turn rate advantage, pushes through to try and reset. Tatsumo is trying to deal with it here. Manages to roll out. New fight, different opponent. Jukes him. Default's coming in. He flips it with his side strafe. Creates a new angle. Default falls into the trap. Uses his forward momentum to absolutely matador him and get behind him. Now, because the flight speeds are not 400 and they're at 200, Tatsumo doesn't have a lot of control because there's a lot of speed and momentum here, but he has far more than the last flight model. Gaddz in this POV in the last flight model could only maintain this angle for maybe 1 second. In Mastermodes, you can hold it for a good while if you have the resources. So what do you do if you're Tatsumo in this case? You strafe hard up and to the right to put yourself angled and above his ship. Where's his strafe indicator? The G's are saying that they're going to the left, which means he's pushing right. The G's say that he's strafing up because they're going down. This is a direct indicator that he is pushing to get onto the guy's pancake and get a view. He wants to go up and to the right here, and that's where he's strafing. Smart decision. You can actually, in master modes, control your position thanks to the lower speed and find a control in this flight model. Higher speeds, this all falls apart. The only thing you're catching or using or making advantage of is your turn rate. But because we like master modes in this aspect, importantly in this aspect, he can actually manipulate his position and hold on to his advantage where Gaddz couldn't. But default defends pretty well. So he gives up, tries a different angle. Now watch. No, the fight must have broke there. So that's okay. Next fight up. Exile course has forward momentum. Tatsumo uses that momentum to slide in behind him. Looking for the pancake here. In this case, you'd be strafing down, but because it's asymmetrical flight and down strafe's weaker, he can't hold on to that when he's pulling back on the stick. So Exile Corsair defends the position. This is an asymmetrical flight problem, but I'm okay with this, to be fair. But he can't use that down strafe to hold on to that position because it's the weaker strafe. So what does he do, chat? He flips it. Watch. Exile Corsair's coming here. He slides to the side, flips it. Exile Corsair's momentum going forward will get used against him. And then Tatsumo's forward momentum will get used for the swing. Here it comes. Boom. Look at that. That's beautiful combat. That's nice geometry. That's positional combat. Gets behind him. Booyah. Is that not the perfect scene? That is exactly what you want. That's almost 90 degrees perfectly. He's probably at about 80 here, but he's starting to get damage onto the hull. Now, here's the consequence to master modes and why this playstyle is not as popular as we want it to be. It's because Tatsumo had to bleed a whole lot of resources to get here. And what is he shooting at? He's shooting at the body of the Gladius, right? Which is the the center of it. Yeah. Problem is that center has not taken any damage out through the fight. It's the face of the Gladius that takes damage in the fight. And it's a two-part system. You have to kill a Gladius either through the face, meaning face to face on the front of the ship, or the body. If the hull or the health pool of the ship was tied together in this aspect, then getting this out position would be far more credible. But the problem is because he's just gotten this position and he's starting to damage it, it's like he's starting from square one. All the progress he would have made in the beginning of the fight, shooting at this guy's face, for example, in the face-to-face aspect of the fight, would be redundant because once he got here, he had to start again. This is one of the issues that's hurting positional combat. We hope they could maybe unify this or increase damage to the body, but you have to think about the knock-on effects of squad battles or team fights there. You don't want everybody to be completely fragile just because they're aimed at from a different direction. But maybe sharing the pool here in regards to the hull would be smarter. Again, look, he's just pulling the stick down. He wants to get these angles. He's trying to hold on to this position. The aim of the game here is to not get on his nose, use your boost, close out the fight. He's getting all these points, holding it. He's emptied his tank. Body and nose is red. Now, here's the thing. If this was a unified pool, he would have got the kill already. But he's going to kill him through one way or another. And eventually, towards the end, it will be the body, it looks like. Nice. So, look, you can see he's rolling and manipulating his position. He went from underneath to above it. Underneath, back to above. Rolls to get the pancake. Here we are. Nice position. Don't have to worry about crashing into the station because they've got control of the momentum too. Some face-to-face aim trading, but they're getting 20 degrees offset. He flips it, rolls underneath, gets underneath him, uses him trying to defend that to then flip again. So Tatsumo's just one step ahead on most of this fight. Notice how Tatsumo's almost always on target, but the opponent is struggling to get him on target. That's outplaying him positionally. Now, what's probably the biggest difference between Gaddz and Tatsumo right now? Tatsumo's used all his resources to accomplish this. His boost is at 14. I'd imagine Gaddz' tank is closer to 50. This is where it hurts. Getting this nice positional aggressive playstyle comes at such a boost cost. A consequence to limited boost, which we do want it to have a limit, but we want better balancing to reward pushing. For example, if you were to reduce the cost of using boost when you incorporate strafing forward, that would reward forward-facing aggressive playstyles for position. And then maybe increase the cost of flying neutral without forward strafe. So a way to mitigate this and promote good positional combat, you spend 50% less boost if you're also incorporating at least 20% forward strafe. Yeah? So buff the guys that are closing the distance and instead just wiggling at a distance or back strafing to create distance. Okay? Not saying we should remove back strafe, not saying that breaking distance shouldn't be a playstyle or an ability to use, a card you can play, but we want the benefits and the balance to lead towards benefiting aggressive playstyles that promote good aesthetic combat, like going forward. Problem is, for the last 4 years, going forward has been a death sentence. Spends all your resources, gets you killed, and you can't maintain a position. But you can in master modes. You just can't do it for long enough. Again, a consequence of the boost. And a consequence of not being able to push through and forward enough. You know, man. They're just trying to keep swapping to each side. Tatsumo rolls it, flips it, gets underneath him, but this guy defends himself really well. This is some seriously up close combat. His head tracking needs to be calibrated, but look at the cost of the resources here. They are empty tank. I imagine Altic is his target is also empty on the tank as well. So they fall apart. Look at how when the boost is empty, the geometry of the combat just dies out. It instantly dies. They're now sitting ducks. He can't even get close to turning soon enough. Pays the price. Again, starts face to face for only a couple seconds, and then immediately they're trying to roll and get to the side of each other. There's a wrestle going on here. Tatsumo wins it, holds the 20% offset, but what did it cost him? All of his boost, 10 to 10 boost. So in this scenario, in modern MasterModes combat, that target would have gone, oh, this guy's playing way too aggressive. Pull a little back, cancel out all the momentum and position that Tatsumo has created, and just cheese him. Yeah, the guy playing defense spends 10% of the resources the guy playing offense. Then the guy playing offense is now a sitting duck because he's out of resource, out of boost pool. And you see, like, the moment the boost is over, it just deteriorates into a face-on-face trade. Yeah, they're just aim trading at this point because they're out of tank. The positional aspect of the fight has ended. So we cut the clip. It's no longer appealing. Gets underneath him. Watermelon rolls. He goes for above him. Nice position. Again, in the last flight model, in Gaddz' video, for example, there is not a video that exists that shows this. You can only do this in MasterModes. The speed is, 150. Tatsumo is in great control of where his ship is in relation to his opponent. In pre-MasterModes, the drift, the river that you guys are going down, you have no control over how to get behind each other in the river. In the river, you only have control of where you're looking at, and you have very slow control over where you're positioned. So, again, confined speeds, greater control. Is your argument that the game looks bad when the speeds are slow? Then you create agility inside of that framework. You create options, ways to fly, accelerations inside of a lower speed ceiling model. And then you can get that agility, fast-paced gameplay you want without deteriorating things. Guys, if you increase the top speeds, yeah, or even if these fights that you're watching here start happening at 400-500 meters, the combat aesthetically slows down. It starts to look slower, and the terrain just whizzes past your screen. We want to use this terrain for line of sight. We want to use stations to get away. We want to weave between asteroids. We want the speeds confined in a sensible space. Here we go. Gets the pancake completely behind him. Shredded. Good outplay. Look, insane pre-turn. Watch this. This is awesome. He comes through, sees the momentum swinging. Tatsumo's lower momentum. He's going to pull the nose here. Where's Wyatt Toast going to do? Be pulling his pitch up. So Tatsumo is going to use his momentum in the drift to swing his ship to the right and get this insane outplay. Now, where's Wired Toast, his target's pip? It's just above his ship. What's he going to do? He's not going to aim at the pip. He's going to plot a course 2 seconds in advance. He swings his ship to the left. That's completely counterintuitive to where he needs to aim his ship. But what's he doing? He's planning on having his opponent's ship fly directly into his crosshair. The pre-nose, boom. Awesome outplay here, massive pre-nose. A benefit to having low momentum, high agility, positional combat. Yeah, this is what we love about MasterModes, and we want to encapsulate and capture more of. But most importantly, we want to reward this playstyle. This type of PvP is what we want. This is the type of combat, dogfighting, that needs to be encouraged, and the ceiling of combat. Not wiggling at a distance, not holding mid-range, not playing passive and in reverse, not just deflecting any positional combat. Reward positional combat with benefits. Awesome. So much head tracking gets used, so much angles. The fight looks far more aesthetic. Awesome. Again, low momentum. 250 on the high side as far as speed goes, 100 to 150 on normally, peaks at like 280. These are reasonable speeds. We don't need the MasterMode speeds to be insanely low, but we can't let them go up to where they were in the last flight model. You don't want to go anywhere near there. Where we're at now is fine. you ask me, a personal opinion, maybe it could come down a little less. And so could the weapon ranges to compensate, because that's really what this is. It's a weapon range to top speed ratio that needs to be taken into account. But look at this, like we're watching ships swing to the sides of each other. They are not just face-to-face trading. Look at how aesthetically different it is in comparison to the last video. Look at him. Look how far ahead he's planning the turn, but look, it fails. So this just shows that the other player saw what was coming and decided to act accordingly. Look. So here, watch. The good position. He's run out of resource because he's at 6 boost. He can't use his boost until that gets back to 25. So they're cancelling each other out. The goal of both players is to get nose on. Tatsumo is planning the turn ahead. But the problem is he has no boost to commit. So he's pulling the nose away, which is counterintuitive to aiming at the pip. But he's trying to swing the ship. Problem is he doesn't have the resources. Wired Toast can see Tatsumo's starting to come up on the side and plan a huge pre-nose. What does he do? Holds the range. So that Tatsumo is pre-turning a ghost, and he has to cancel out his pre-turn. Watch. Pre-turn cancelled because the momentum wasn't in his favor. He doesn't have the boosts to force it. Tatsumo's made a big mistake here. Doesn't matter though. He's so far in the head of the fight, it doesn't matter. But this just shows, Wired doesn't push forward, back strafes up, or just doesn't use any forward momentum. Tatsumo doesn't get the position. It's become face-to-face. And there we go. Tatsumo gets behind him, is recovering his resources, uses his last little bit of boost to create one last pancake to just close it off. Wired's having a hard time defending this. Does some poor rolling and some poor decision making here. Loses. Tatsumo is just toying with it, rolling, just creating new angles, playing a very safe play style to eventually close out the fight. Again, all right, a little bit of momentum here. They near the station. Nice, insane turn at the end to create a new angle. This is angle combat, positional combat. This is geometry, yeah? And it is thanks to lower speeds, okay? Lower top speeds. Don't misinterpret lower speeds at the top ceiling as slower combat. It's about fast-paced combat inside of a lower ceiling speed framework that MasterModes delivers. And just shows, guys, the positional combat that is possible in MasterModes is awesome. We just have to shift the meta and buff these playstyles to encapsulate that. Another question we have to ask ourselves, and so does this CIG's team, is should the other archetypes be participating, and this is extremely important, should the other archetypes be participating in this style of combat? Because currently, heavy fighters don't have turn rate, they don't have agility, they don't have fast laterals. What are their positional combat capabilities? Backstrafe and try to do something about it. Otherwise, die a slow death. They don't have options because they are pigeonholed into a slow class, a slower archetype that has no positional combat. 2, the medium fighters, halfway point between the heavy and the light. They are limited in their resource when it comes to positional combat, but they don't have none of it. So what is the meta when it comes to medium fighters and the current meta of the game? Hop in a medium fighter, push yourself against the speed wall, so the bubble. You have the unboosted, you have the bigger boosted. You get up onto the speed wall, you force your opponent into a drift, similar to the last flight model where you're both up against the drift or up against the speed wall, and you keep it face to face. Because no one can, the light fighter, the other fighter can't push and change and manipulate a position because you're both just up against the speed wall here. So how do you fix poor geometry and poor boring combat like this? You reapproach the archetype, in my opinion. Give it agility so that it is actually interested in a fight. It isn't bottlenecked into using some sort of cheese and it can actually wrestle. It would involve rebalancing their weapons and stuff like that, but That's the question people need to ask, and so does Yogi and the team. Does archetypes not being able to participate in positional combat, is that fun? Is that good for the game? It's up to you guys to decide. I'll let you talk about that in the comments, but we'll keep going. I want to move on to the duels, but that is where I personally feel that MasterModes falls short, is that the light fighters and the snub fighters have such amazing flight, and they're truly fun, a really pleasing experience. Not perfect, but good, great. Whereas the medium and heavy fighter experiences are so poor, bland, and boring because they have no agility, no positional combat. So you bring those ships closer to baseline in regards to their maneuverability, and you may be hurt. You take some weapons off them or whatever needs to happen to compensate. You make all the archetypes more fun. Make them more capable. Yeah. I don't mind the archetype system. I like it. I just think the ships need to be closer to baseline. Anyways, we move forward to the Shadow Moses duels.
This is a sparring program, similar to the programmed reality of the Matrix.
It has the same basic rules, rules like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent, others can be broken. Understand? Then hit me, if you can.
Alright guys, so this is straight from the training session. This is Thumb, one of our newer members who recently got into Shadow Moses in a full capacity, going up against one of our applicants. Pitched meta. They're fighting to the sides of each other, trying to create an angle, making sure that they're not losing time. Thumb gets with the 180 and look, just swinging both sides, each trying to create some offset. This is what good combat looks like, yeah? And the best thing about MasterModes is this is relatively competitive. This isn't what it's going to look like at the very ceiling, but this is what a good fight can look like. And you would not get in the last flight model with higher speeds. Another duel, this is Thumb and Free Flight up against an opponent, Rudy from Howlers. They're Thumb's just going to use his typical playstyle, which is just to get as close as he can, rely on his well-crafted control, and then use it to make the other player uncomfortable. Thumb's not going to let this fight slip, and he's going to just build an insurmountable amount of pressure by keeping the fight so close. He's staying off of his turn rate, making sure to change outputs when he gets close to emptying the magazine. Again, keep it close, keep it tight. This is why it's so important to practice fighting up close and really stress test your skills, because the problem is when an opponent comes and actually attempts positional control on you, you need to be able to hold that. Next up is Perry, Normal, and Among Us from the org. Two incredible pilots right now, arguably some of the best. Among Us wants to keep this close, force it really tight, and that's where Perry's comfortable. So we see a lot of head tracking usage. Both players are trying to break off each other's nose and create an angle. This is going to come down to boost conservation. Who's been more efficient with their boost? Perry tries a maneuver. Among Us sees it coming. He holds. Perry's emptying the tank. Among Us is just getting outside of his turn rate to nullify it. Now Among Us spends his boost, gets the angle 20 degrees off to close it out. Another video, this is Thumb versus play outside of our org, Kaiman. So this one is not from a training session, but it is from Free Fly. Picked this one because it just shows how cool some of a good geometry fight can look in MasterModes. Again, there's massive potential here. It just needs to be captured and reinforced, I think. Like, take a look at just how the fight looks. Yeah, like this is what you'd want out of a sci-fi movie with 6 off, I would imagine. So just like a real wrestle for position, a lot of head tracking, all the hallmarks of a good fight. Next is me versus Therapist, an applicant in Shadow Moses as well. Each one of us is fighting to make sure that we're keeping up with the damage requirement of winning the duel. But then we're also trying to merge these ships close so that we can convert this into a turn battle. So finally, we've reached the speed of where we want to be able to maneuver. And we're going for out turns. I'm trying to get a good angle. He's fighting it aggressively. He plays very forward centric, so do I. So we're getting a lot of turning. And it has a lot of head tracking. So it's a good fight. A lot of us train this way so that you can learn how to play the game under pressure. If you fly, you know, interceptor archetypes or snubs, you're never dogfighting like this. You're not really creating meaningful position. You're just doing strafe runs on targets in squadron battle and stuff like that. You're ruling out dueling as a skill. And when it comes to learning Flight and Star Citizen, there is no better way to learn than through the furnace of 1v1s and up close stress testing fights. So make sure that you guys get into free flight and learn the game. Don't bypass the game by just flying archetypes that aren't flight dependent, like snubs and interceptors. Just to further expand on this, if you're, say, building an organization, a squad of friends or teammates, or just trying to build up your individual skill set, the best thing you can do is to just dive into the deep end, yeah? Make sure that you're flying like a medium or a light archetype so that you are living or dying by the sword, so to speak. If you're relying on snub fighters or interceptors, then you're just avoiding combat the moment it starts tipping out of your favor. And you're not really exploring most of the flight mechanics like pitch control, like roll control, conserving boost, and all these other stuff like shield regen cooldown and stuff like this. You're just avoiding a lot of the game in favor of just escaping when it doesn't suit you. So a lot of players are studying their growth. Get into the game, dive into the deep end. It's going to suck in the beginning, but you're going to build a way deeper skill set than just using and maining these other archetypes that aren't as flight dependent. Alright, this fight that I've got coming up here, this is Among Us and Albert. I'd consider these two probably the best positional fighters in the game currently.
Morpheus is fighting Neo.
Number 1 and number 2. Among Us just came off of winning CitizenCon, the Atmo Esports 2v2 event, where you got a trophy and everything, met Chris, all that jazz. So these guys are really stress testing and are very close to the absolute ceiling of what Positional is capable of in MasterModes. I don't think there's a two scarier players in this. But what I want to highlight here is just almost how flat this duel looks because both of these players are not willing to almost give up an inch. So when two players are flying the same ship, it's a mirror match. It's hard to create position because there's not enough variation of flight when both are hitting the absolute ceiling. Final video I've got here, guys, is a duel from pre-MasterModes. This is the 1v1 PAX tournament. This is Among Us and Tai Chi. This ladder included all of the best players in 1v1s, and this is the last flight model. I want to show you how little geometry and positional combat there is, because this is probably the most competitive duel that happened right before the end of the last flight model. Again, this is the final round of a tournament. You could almost compare this to just an aim trading game, right? Like, we're not looking at out-turning here. We're not looking at great positioning. We're just looking at two players trying to crosshair the pip. It's kind of like watching a video of Osu. So, just shows you guys the drastic difference and potential that comes from it. Look at these speeds too, much higher. A consequence to the last flight model. Here we got the second fight. Tai Chi takes the first.
Check fire. Shields hit. Check fire.
I think an issue I have with this is that if you didn't know that these two were the best players of the last flight model, then you wouldn't be able to tell it from the duel, right? Like, you're not seeing anything incredible happening. not very aesthetically pleasing at all. Doesn't look theatrical, nothing. It's just looks pretty plain Jane. And this is why I think MasterModes has more potential than what we're dealing with. These two are absolutely floating down the river of momentum. Taichi wins the tournament. Guys, I hope this video provided you some insight. I hope maybe I've given you information to come to your own conclusions on what you want out of MasterModes and what you want out of face-to-face combat and positional combat. Whether this looks appealing to you or not, that's okay. Everyone is allowed their opinion, and everyone should be heard for sure. Really enjoyed making this video in my spare time. It's been extremely difficult, but worthwhile because the passion for the game and its future's there. If there's anything I could recommend to getting better at Star Citizen and more competitive in dogfighting, it's to just go out there and do it. You need to get into the furnace and fight these players. They are always in free fly. You'll always find a challenge, and you just make your way and you progress through opponents and build up your skill set. You're not going to build a skill set if you're flying archetypes like interceptors, snubs, heavy fighters, medium fighters to a degree as well, where flight is so restricted and you just don't have the ability to push it to limits like this. So get in there, start dueling, guys. It's a lot of fun, and I hope to make more content that'll open you guys up a bit more. Yeah, free your mind. Anyways, I'm streaming live on Twitch almost every night. Make sure you guys drop by. Instead of the 1, 2, 3, if you got this far, throw me free your mind in the comment section. I'll know you guys got through the whole video. I'll see you guys in Arena Commander and above Shepherd's Rest.
You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind.
Okie dokie. For my mind.
What if he makes it?
No one's ever made the first jump.
I know. But what if he does?
He won't.
Right. No problem. Free my mind.